Whenever you're ready, you grainy son of a bitch.
Oh, I'm pissed now. It's the Jacket Off Podcast, episode 20. October 29th, because I wrote the date down this time.
Good, yeah, date it so next time we realize that we don't... Oh, episode 21, recorded November 37th.
30, November 37th. Clearly on a leap year, 7 days after the end of that month.
Yeah, that's how it works, right?
Yeah, that's how leap years work, an entire week.
I'm not a calendarologist.
Calendarologist. Not a calendarizer. So.
Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a calendar.
We skipped a week. So, of course.
It was just 1 week?
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing myself when I looked at the last week's video, because I was trying to recap what happened between the upload date of that video and the recording of this one. Incidentally, probably not very many things.
Oh, shout out us. Only missing 1 week.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty good. And I don't... Last weekend, I think I had time. I don't know the... I think I just completely went through the weekend.
We definitely missed 2 weeks then.
Why?
Because your Halloween party was the week before.
I thought the Halloween party was in between the one. There was one. I guess it could have been 2 weeks. I don't know why I felt like it wasn't. Well, the one we didn't do one last weekend.
Correct, which we could have, but we didn't.
Right, and then the one before that was the Halloween party, right?
Well, we didn't record it the weekend of your Halloween
that's
party.
What I'm saying. But there's whatever. Anyway, we were talking about the Halloween party on the last one.
Yeah.
So, speaking of, okay, so there's one thing we got to address that.
Do we?
Yeah, I think we do. I think we do. From a different perspective than what we had on the last. We have to now do pre and post. We have to do the post game wrap up show.
We can't leave them. We can't leave the 5 listeners hanging.
Well, it's not them, because fuck them, right? But it's more for me. This guy right here. I was thinking about it when I was at work, those next few days, and everybody was asking me, how'd your Halloween party go? And like, the first answer that I had for them changed over time. The more people I talked to, because like the first few people were like, how was your Halloween party? And I'm like, it fucking sucked, man. and they're like, why? It couldn't have sucked that bad. You worked so fucking hard on it. And I was like, well, I think it's a matter of comparison, isn't it? Because it's you can't really expect much if you don't work hard or you don't do anything. Then you can just walk into the party and be like, all right, I don't care what happens. But in a way, you've worked it up and done a bunch of shit, and when you finally get to the party itself, and it turns into kumbaya, there might have been a point where you did something wrong, or maybe the people that you invited did something wrong, or I don't know. Sometimes you just don't know. Then that was the answer that I started coming up with later on, is, oh, how was your Halloween party? It kind of more became I don't know how my Halloween party was. Or at least I know how it was for me, not for everybody else. That was kind of my response to that.
Okay.
The long and short of the story is that I wasn't very happy with the fact that, from a completely egotistical perspective, because it's really the only way that I approached it from the beginning anyway, we discussed it, there's a there's a level of minimum participation that one would expect when you do something like this, when you spend, a lot of money and a lot of time and effort into something, and it turns into a massive shift in people's interest. Like, and to be more specific about it, when you try to get a party going like 100 times, where you start having these type of things, you start having ebbs and flows, and which happens at parties anyway. It's kind of the natural flow of things. But when one ebb lasts for like 1.5 to 2 hours, where it's a high school prom or an 8th grade night, I don't think I should throw Halloween parties anymore if that's kind of going to be what it is. I think 3 or 4 years ago, if this party had been what it was, it might have been different. But I think everybody's old. I think everybody's old, and they got to go home and watch their stories. I think we made fun of ourselves so often about that we created a self-fulfilling prophecy. The 3 people that stayed up latest at the party were the 3 people that always stay up latest at the party. And it doesn't matter if it's
they were still partying even when there was no party.
And the partying part of it, we did, in essence, we did it in reverse, if you really think about it, because we front loaded the party, right? Like we put together this big thing and strung up lights and rigged up all this equipment, and we're trying to like go completely nuts at the beginning, and everybody was out at a fire. It's like the way that I think about it in my head is like from a song by song perspective. Like at some of the highest points that we thought we were going at the height, like where we thought we were at the precipice of what we were doing, which was like, when we were playing music that's like what we wanted to play, which is the high energy, these things that just climb and then they drop and then they climb and then they drop. And it's all crazy shit. There's like 4 people in the tent, and there's a bunch of people out at the fire. We could have been playing Dave Matthews all night. It probably would have abetted more ambience onto the people out at the fire, half to 3/4 of the party, where people were literally standing outside a tent that when you walked outside of the tent, you could see the tent physically glowing from space. And like just shit going everywhere, and it was so fucking loud. And then there's this fire going on like 10 feet away, where everybody's like, yeah, things at my job are, they're getting a little stressful, and I feel like, gosh, just life's getting tough, man. Life's getting, and then in the inside of the tents, it's what is happening? I really don't get it. I don't get how people like could feel like that's not weird. Like where you're standing out at a fire and then what's going on in there is like, I don't know. It's like going to see a concert and standing outside the fence type of thing. Like, why would you do that to yourself? I don't know. It's just my rant of the week.
Can't help you, Brent. What's done is done.
Your insight has clearly guided me in the right direction, i.e. not saying anything to add to the conversation.
I just let you talk. Just let you go on your Halloween party.
You're not a sounding board for my inadequacies. This is supposed to be a 2-way street. Anyway, so speaking of other Halloween parties, did you actually do Sasha's Halloween party? Did that even be birthday party? Did that even
I went to it, yeah.
You went to it?
Yeah.
What? So was that another out at the fire fucking party? Did we fail on that one too, Dillon?
Well, it wasn't never gonna be a banger party anyway, so I mean, I brought my
accepted that from the other one too.
I brought my fog machine and my $250 fucking swarm. I set it up in the house, and yeah, had some lights going. So,
How many people were there?
Oh, not many. Maybe like 10, 15.
You know, there's got to be at least one time where there could be a captive audience.
It's not gonna happen, Brent.
Because both things we're talking about, the missing link in the whole chain is a captive audience, isn't it? Like that's pretty much what we're talking about, is where you funnel people into a room and you force them to accept your, like it's like
That's your
accept
problem. You're
my
looking for
art,
this.
look at it.
You're looking for a captive audience, but you're trying to make a captive audience out of people that don't want to be captive. They just want to eat chicken wing dip and talk about fucking Susie at the farmer's market.
The
How
only
she died
thing
last week, and you're not going to be able to get your Cubanelle peppers because
I
hers were the
was
bomb.
I was thinking I was thinking about that in the car, and I was like, you know, why didn't I just play like EQX the whole time, which is the alt indie station up here? Like I'm thinking in my head, like I know all those songs, I know what these people like, or at least a good percentage of them, and a good percentage of these people make up Becky's friends. It's kind of the point that I failed to make with myself about the party, was that it could have gone one of two ways. I could have played it to exactly what people wanted to hear, which probably would have yielded a more positive result on the audience feedback scale, or I could have gone completely uncompromised and well, not could have, I did. I did go completely uncompromised and do exactly what it is that I wanted to do, maybe with some exceptions, trying to do throwbacks and things that people might have been enjoyed. There were a couple. I mean, that's the thing. Later on, thinking about it, there was a couple sections in there that were pretty fun and they were really cool, and the people were actually digging it and whatever. But that's really only the responsibility of somebody who can like spur on a part. There's always that one person, isn't there? There's always that one person that will then start to do something, or multiple people that'll start to like bring it all in and start to make people sort of do it. You kind of always need that person at a party. I think it was partly Becky's downstairs neighbor, Andrew, Ed. Those are the people that sort of started
Yeah.
to cycle people, in.
And when you include Andrew in that group, then you start to see where your party was at.
That's
if
the thing.
If Andrew's one of the ones that are helping to get the party started,
well, I think that's kind of short selling it, because I think what it is if you play what Andrew wants to hear, which is what we want to hear, the enthusiasm of it is then what, because then really it doesn't so much matter what you're playing, is that there is somebody reacting to you playing it, and then everybody else is like, well, I guess that it's leading by example. That's all it is for him. It's just he's the guy that turns it into a festival. The guy that's like waving his fucking glow sticks all over the place, and then it adds an air of legitimacy to what you're doing. So then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, so now everybody's starting to feel like, okay, now I get
I'm
what the
selling it to
idea is.
Andrew, which you could sell him a fucking acorn that you picked off of a tree, and he'd buy it at that point.
I could sell a ketchup popsicle to Andrew if he was wearing white gloves, as long as it had a couple drops and some gross fucking whining stuff. So Sasha's birthday, low key. Dylan plays what? Some fucking
I just played that. I just played that playlist that we made.
Well, you had to have added more shit to it, right?
Oh yeah, I added just about like 50 songs or so. But
yeah.
With Spotify, once the playlist is done, it'll just start playing like a radio based on that. So
then it keeps
Spotify.
DJ Spotify wins again and keeps the party going by using algorithms. Congratulations. So I was not to bring the house down, because kind of already did that. But did you see the Chester Bennington Relief concert?
No, I didn't catch any of it.
I watched some key highlights today, and yeah, a little bit yesterday. There was some really good stuff on there. It was kind of like how when they do the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame performances, where they have like a bunch of people, sort of going in and out, and they, there's one of the highlights for this was like, you had Blink 182 and Jonathan from Korn and Jeremy from A Day to Remember and Ollie from Bring Me the Horizon and the one lead singer guy from One OK Rock who's really good. I can't recommend One OK Rock enough from a overseas new music type of thing. They're probably going to break over here soon. If they haven't already a little bit. They're on Fueled by Ramen. The Fueled by Ramen picked them up. There was some good lady singers on there. There was Zed played drums for something. I can't remember what that one was. And Steve Aoki did some shit, and BB Rexa, and overall it was a good. The reason why I wanted to make a comment about it was because there was a couple standout ones that were pretty remarkable, and one of the best ones was, and now the name of the song escapes me, but Jonathan doing crawling in my skin, these wounds they will. Remember that song? What the hell is that song?
Crawling?
No, that's another one. That was the one that
you just saying crawling.
No, hang on.
Off of Hybrid Theory.
No.
That's what you just sang.
I'm gonna read the track list.
Oh, for God's sakes, quit looking stuff up.
Fine, Jesus Christ. Forgive me for wanting to be informed about the topics that I fucking am talking about. So the other ones. What the hell was the other people I said? Jonathan? And then I said Jeremy. No, Jeremy was the one that did Crawling. Crawling is not that song. That was where I was confused about the track list. No, maybe Jeremy did Something in My Head. What's that song, In My Head? Something in My Head. Anyways, it's one of those songs that's got a lot of vocal fry in it, and he fucking destroyed it.
Bleed It Out?
No, that was at the way end with Everybody. Everybody came out on stage and did that song. Machine Gun Kelly did a very heavily rapped song, very fast, like super good. Him and Mike switched off on a bunch of sections. But Jonathan doing Crawling, I guess, because I probably mixed up the one that Jeremy did with Crawling. That one was gross. He was wicked good. That's the perfect song for him to sing because it translates pretty much exactly to his vocal style. It was really good. And Ollie did a couple songs, and they kind of did some medleys. There was a couple times where Mike switched a rap verse out, and he did like a different one from a different song. And they went all across the board. But I just wanted to mention it because it was a good show to just put on. There were some vocal performances that are like a little sketchy because there's some audio problems. I think they used like Ollie's rehearsal track over like the bottom of his vocals because you can kind of hear it, and it's not super great. You can hear what he's trying to do. He's clearly good. I mean, the dude's kind of a good singer. I feel like you got to be able to give him credit for it because I bought that live at maybe it was Brixton or whatever show that they did, and he's fucking believable.
That's a surprise that he's that good because he destroyed his voice from the earlier years of Bring Me the Horizon.
I think
which is why they do that type of music they do now.
Well, that's why that one with the orchestra is. I think I want to say it was Wembley, but maybe it wasn't. It might not have been that big. It might be Brixton. But holy shit! Oh no, it was wet. Yeah, no, that was it. Brixton. That fucking show. The way the music that they're doing now, obviously being a cleaner and more accessible sound, is probably the only thing that he can do that, you know, doesn't sound like garbage. Because everything, I mean, it's very unlikely that he's going to be able to go out there. There's only a few songs in there that are from the old, like, Shadow Moses and shit like that.
It's not even old.
It's only it was only
that's from Sempiternal. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, there was a radical shift in the sound from Sempiternal. Like, that's still metalcore, and it's still, you know, hard.
Yeah.
This one has got a lot of this one's got a lot of those, like, bluesy. That's the Spirit, and all those songs the riffs almost sound like they're Shinedown riffs, kind of. Some of them sound like Shinedown or Seether riffs and stuff.
I was just thinking about Shinedown the other day.
Why? What came up? Or would you just hear
I was playing Rock Band, and I saw just I was playing like Devour or something. I'm like, man, this album was their fucking Katy Perry's Teenage Dream album of the rock world.
I always likened it to Nevermind, not because of its impact on culture. That's definitely doesn't have as much of that as Nevermind, but
that's why I likened it to Teenage Dream.
Well,
like every other song's a single, and they literally were putting those singles out for like 3 years. Like, oh, this is new Shinedown? No, this is just off of, what was it, what's that album called? It wasn't Crow Butterfly. That was one of the songs off of it.
Sound of Madness.
Sound of Madness, yeah.
That record, I remember when let's see, that had to have been, what was it? Junior year in college.
Twice.
What'd you say?
I said I think they went on tour with it like twice.
Oh yeah, they did like a 30 Seconds to Mars length tour off that record. I mean, they probably dropped dead at the end of that tour, or however many tours it was, because that album was such a monster. I mean, that's like Frampton Comes Alive level of singles and shit in attendance. I mean, that was at a time where modern rock was like, I can't even believe how fucking insane it was. I was listening to some shit, like, it's so weird because it's butt rock. All of it's butt rock.
Oh yeah, the buddiest of butt rock.
I think
Seether's the buddiest of butt rock.
Yeah, I think Shinedown at least had some orchestrative qualities to it, and there was some good, melodic songwriting in there. But the thing is that I was thinking about it because one of my coworkers is one of those people that, like, only listens to that era, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a point where I turned the corner and just stopped. And I don't know, it had to have been when I moved over, maybe my second year of college, when it started to move over to metalcore and like the Gothenburg sound. Like, I started moving from stuff like, because Jesus Christ, Sound of Madness was so fucking good. And that record was great. And I would also say probably, what was that Seether double record?
Disclaimer?
Disclaimer was before that, but...
Well, that was their first... Disclaimer was... There's Disclaimer, then Disclaimer 2, and then there was... Remedy, the album Remedy
that was good too. I would say that the height there is at, like, well, and then what's this is the other thing, the soundtrack to all of this, the collection that sort of then brought all this together was the fucking Punisher soundtrack. You remember the good Punisher movie?
There's no such thing, but yeah, I remember.
Yeah, but it's like there's no but comparatively, I'm saying the that record was like a period of time where butt rock was at its most amazing level. Like, holy shit. You had like Strata. Strata sort of blurred the line between butt rock and what we would later sort of transition into with like goth rock and shit like that, like Evans Blue and sort of this post. I don't know what you would call it. AFI is kind of in there somewhere, but they're a little
AFI's
earlier.
been around forever.
They're much earlier, but these bands that kind of came in there, like the Evans Blues and the Evans Blues and the Blue October blues, lots of blues in there. Blue October.
Well, it's sad music. I got the blues, man.
I just remembered the thing that I wanted to talk about finally, because we kind of brought it full circle. I was talking to one of my coworkers when we were out on a trip. We were in Kentucky and we were just driving, and I was talking about how
smooching in Kentucky.
Yeah, exactly. No, not even a little. Is that the Kentucky slogan, smooching in Kentucky? Well, I think it would be smooching your cousin in Kentucky, right?
It doesn't matter, just smooching.
So, the real slogan is "Get lucky in Kentucky."
Yeah,
that's legit. That's one that's on T-shirts that you can go buy.
I shop at the Chinatown of Kentucky, and they don't really know. Smooching is the only word they know, and
you're reaching.
Cookie jar on top of the fucking fridge. I gotta get it somehow.
You gotta pull those cookies out of this podcast. You gotta get that material.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to get to with this topic, I was trying to wrap my head around it, was that every period had a tug and pull, good and evil for music. The first one was in the flower power era that lasted for a really long time, right? So like it was flower power dominated the world, dominated the national landscape and the identity of it, right? The fucking California dreaming mamas and the papas, everything's fucking sunshine and rainbows, right? And then it comes to a grinding halt when somebody gets pissed. What'd you say?
Nothing. I was just mouthing my words.
So it comes to a grinding halt, and who does it come to a grinding halt with? Black Sabbath. They said it themselves. Black Sabbath was the answer to the flower power generation. They're like, we're gonna make angry, evil music because we hate all of those assholes who think that everything is ponies and rainbows, right? So then we fast forward a little bit. And then we move into disco, right? That's about 15 years later. So disco's ruling the airwaves for forever. It's like, yeah, everything's sunshine and rainbows, the fucking Bee Gees and Donna Summer and whatever. And then somebody brings that to a grinding halt. Who is it? It's fucking maybe Kiss.
No, they did a disco song.
Yeah, but that was later on because they had just come at the tail end because they had started before it. And
they started before disco.
Right, but
yeah, they just jumped in line. That wasn't Kiss. Take that back.
Motley Crue.
Okay, that'll work. I'll take even though that's probably not true, but it might be.
Well, I guess you could. When Black Sabbath is like a
we get it. Then hair metal comes. Then grunge
answer.
Comes. All right, what are you trying to get to?
Well, what I was trying to get to was
I don't need the history lesson.
We were talking about. Well, it's just to illustrate how often it happens, not necessarily we know that, but. We were talking about Shinedown. That's what brought me to it. Was that what happened for us was in high school, you had the boy band. That was a very unique fixture of the late 90s, early 2000s, right? Can we agree on that?
Yeah, that wasn't high school though.
Well, yeah, I mean middle school. It's not okay. Let's not say high school. Look, I was talking about eras, I guess. So we equate it to dates, right? The turn of the millennium, right around in there.
Millennium,
right? Backstreet Boys, Millennium, and Willennium.
Backstreet Boys,
Robbie Williams, Millennium. So the boy band,
Willenniums,
the boy band. Happy music. The reason why I came to this conclusion was because me and my coworker were talking about boy bands, and she's like, my kids, when they were growing up, she's older than me. She's like, my kids, when they were growing up, like that, it seemed like to me like that was that's music that's very happy. There's some sort of response here to what's going on in the world to create what the boy band. There's got to be something.
Bill Clinton.
And I was like, huh?
Bill Clinton.
Exactly. Bill Clinton was having sex with interns, and that turned the country into a very uncertain political landscape, right? Some record company exec is in a boardroom somewhere, and they're like, how can we capitalize on this fear and uncertainty in America? Maybe we should create some happy music that will counteract this. I wonder if I can get together a group of bubblegummy, attractive males who would take everybody's minds off of this and make me $1 billion. That conversation probably never happened. I'm probably just making it up, but it's the kind of the way that I'd like to think about it.
Probably because boy bands existed before the 90s.
Well,
Jackson 5's the boy band.
Yeah, that
New
kind
Edition.
of falls. To me, that kind of falls into the disco
'cause they're
category. Black? I don't even.
They're black,
I didn't even hear
they
the
do
thing.
disco.
I didn't even hear the thing that qualified that, so I have no response. Anyway,
People like you that made Michael Jackson white. Fucking bigot.
So, what I was trying to say, the point that I'm trying to make is,
I still don't know which point you're trying to make here.
there was a thing that happened to boy bands too, just like every other time in history. People got sick of a certain climate in American music that happened to be on the happier side. And I'm going to ask you, what do you think?
That music's still getting made. It's still getting made. They're just not boy bands.
Right, but this happens
cyclically.
This happens cyclically. That's what I'm trying to make the point of.
It didn't happen to boy bands. Shitty pop music's still being made. Happy pop music's still being made.
Yeah, but there was a popularity that happened where a certain type of music took over the boy bands that was, and I mean, you said it earlier with grunge. Grunge was a response to the decadence and the poppiness of the Sunset Strip in the 80s.
Yeah, but if you look at the Billboard charts right now, I guarantee half the songs will be an overproduced pop song, just like a boy band song is. Just because it's not a boy band doesn't make it any different than what's currently being created. The same producers are producing these songs, just with different singers.
I think current era...
It's easier to market a single face than a whole group of faces. So that's what popular music does.
I think what I'm trying to make the point of, though, is that we're currently in the up. Like the current state of pop music, we're in whatever the equivalent of the boy bands, the Sunset Strip, disco. We're in there because EDM has made a comeback, and that's music largely predicated on that sort of idea, right? It's a simplified, thing to me. But so then there's got to be a response to this, or not? There doesn't have to be. There aren't rules to this. It's just like an sometimes observable phenomenon is that people start to find that there's a certain thing of music that becomes drastically more popular than another
like the
thing.
mumble rap.
It just so happens that maybe that style of music can be considered more happy or less happy based on what happened before.
The mumble rap.
So like with mumble rap is a response to basically, I think that's a darker thing. Would you agree that that's something darker?
Yeah.
Because it comes from culturally a dark place. I mean, they had a Vox thing on mumble rap that kind of explained why it happened.
You didn't even forget my joke. That's a bad joke anyways.
Can you please say it for the sake of me?
I just said what, because they're black? It was a callback. Quit rubbing your nose, you fucking blur. All right. I still don't know what point you were coming across there, so Let's
I
move
was
on to a
trying
different
to
topic.
say,
hey, those Devils, they're 8-2-0
Oh my
currently at the
God.
recording of first place in the their division. So that's some hot sports looks. Back to you in the studio there, Jim.
so I was just trying to say that I found it interesting that there are eras
Okay,
in
yeah, I
music where
gotcha.
people
I
are
gotcha.
responding to what has happened before and they get sick of it and then they do something else.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about how good of an album Sound of Madness was, and now how, particularly if I listen to the radio and I put it on a typical modern rock station, I find it completely unlistenable, and I don't particularly know why. Because I should still like that sort of thing, because I liked it in the past. How do changes in tastes evolve like that?
I'm not a psychology major. I'm sorry.
Really thought you would have been able to solve this problem, Dylan. At least in the length of one podcast, you would have been able to solve all social ills as it relates to tastes in music.
Let me take a look at my notes. I'll get back to you by the end of it. How's that sound?
Okay, perfect. So, finished building my PC.
Oh, did you? I knew that.
Yeah, you knew that. That's the thing you were aware of. However,
I was looking behind the curtain. I was peeking.
Actually, before I get to that, what I should say is
I was playing the audience. That's what I was doing. It wasn't.
Yesterday I told you I was out at Lake George, and wasn't it the Great Escape? I know that was probably your first question.
Friday night. What are you doing? Get the spooks.
Oh my God. What? Because they're black?
See, you didn't have to say that.
Listen, you didn't have to say what you said either. I went out and we went out during the day because I need a jacket real bad. And I was
LL
like,
Bean? You went to LL Bean, didn't you?
No, I went to Wilson's Leather. Well, actually, that was where I got both jackets. Wilson's Leather, incidentally enough, sells
Mr. Wilson.
really what the fuck sells really great not leather jackets, because I didn't buy a single leather jacket in there. Not because I didn't want to see if there was one, not because I didn't want one, but every one that I tried on felt like it was either like way too bikery or way too like ostentatious in a way. Like it was either Ryan Gosling from Drive or Easy Rider.
The souvenir jacket.
Well, I ended up getting a basic black nylon bomber.
Are we really sitting here talking about jackets right now?
Dylan, this is supposed to be an in real life fucking podcast. IRL. I don't know what more I can do for you. I'm just trying to lend credence to an otherwise fucking like if this could just be silence if I don't have it.
You were literally expanding a text that you would send me that just says, "Yo, got a new jacket," to a goddamn Hemingway style story right now.
Listen, is this not storytelling? Is this not what a stand-up person who does stand-up would do? They take the arbitrary, they take the mundane, and they turn it into they thread it into many
deconstructing this too much
things.
I'm deconstructing it. Continue. All right, I'm back at Wilson's. You see the perfect jacket. It's black. It fits perfect. There's pockets inside the jacket so you could put quarters in there to pay your tolls on the thruway. Go.
I'm so diminished. I'm so defeated. Like Hemingway, I feel like I want to put a shotgun in my mouth and blow my brains out. I'm Edgar Allan Poe. Well, so the jackets, whatever. That's what it is. It's definitely not important. It's just the only thing that happens in my life because I don't know anything happening in my life. I'm really bored. I mean, listen, I could tell you a fucking Kentucky travel story, but I don't.
I already heard a Kentucky travel story. You had fried chicken. We all know.
I didn't. I didn't have one piece of fried chicken. I fucking had barbecue. That's what kind of where I was at on that. Beautiful, delicious barbecue. It was good. Well, I guess that we can probably move on to really what is considered the meat and potatoes.
Well, you said you built a new your PC. You kind of was there anything that you wanted to say about that?
I had a crisis the other day about the building of the new PC because the last component was the video card, and I put that in. And before I had put that video card in, I had been playing Dead Cells. And when Becky's friends came over one night, I was kind of just still playing it. They walked in, and I was just doing a run until I died. And then he's like, "What are you playing?" And I'm like, "It's this game that I kind of wanted to play for a little while." And then he goes, "Did you put your new graphics card in?" I was like, "Yeah, I just put a 1060 in. I got the dual fan card, 6 gigs." And he's like, "You just put that card in your computer and you're playing this game?" And then I had an existential crisis because I was playing a pixel art game on a PC that I had just completed building, and I didn't know what games to play. I was sitting here staring at a Steam library that I had collected over time, and every single game in it was basically like back catalog, back generation, all the way back. And I was just like, what am I doing? Why did I do this? I'm sitting at this desk playing a Game Boy game, playing a 3DS game on a 27-inch monitor, and that's my life.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Well, there's not anything necessarily wrong with that if it's a game that I enjoy playing, and that's always really been the point. But I could have played that on anything ever.
Did you have fun building your computer?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that in a way, I feel like I'm caught in a continuous loop of wanting to create rather than wanting to use, or wanting to, because in a way I think the process of creating something feels more meaningful than sitting down to actually use what you've made. And I guess it's different based on what you make, but it's not like art. I'm the only one that can appreciate what I built, and the reason why I built it was to use it for a purpose. When you create art, maybe somebody will buy it and take it home. It's, when that happens, great, cool. But with your computer, it's like, it's right here. Nobody's coming over to my house and being like, "Oh, it's fucking sick, dude. You fucking ever watch Random Frank P fucking desk setup, dude? You go to r/battle state." It's like, I'm the only one who gives a fuck about this stuff. And then when I actually build it, it's like, I'm not playing, I'm not over here playing for fucking 4 to 6 hours a day. I have like I have shit going on in my life. It's like, I feel like I built it at the wrong time. I feel like everything is always at the wrong time.
Yeah, but you probably couldn't build it at any other time, though.
Well,
the time that would have been the right time to build it would be a time that you wouldn't be able to afford to build it. So
it's, yeah, you know what it is? It goes back to
just
that,
wish fulfillment at this point.
It ultimately goes back to the concept of like, so
I surround myself with wish fulfillment.
Listen, we all know it's a sickness. It's a disease. I guess I don't really know how to explain it. I think it comes down to like, I think we all want to we all want to have the best tools for the things that allow us to do what we want to do, right? Like there's always the ambition to use powerful these powerful machines or powerful tools or the next greatest thing to fulfill some sort of like, because the phrase an artist is only as good as his tools applies to certain things. It sort of is like, you know, when you watch, like a lot of times I still, even though I don't really play guitar as much as I used to, I still watch things on YouTube about like, you know, guitar reviews. That's still an industry that's still like going forward, even though I kind of lost track of it. Like there's these guys that do this review from like these guitar reviews from music stores and shit. And they sort of just talk about like, what's the best value for your money? Like if you were to go out there and
The British dudes?
yeah, I think
They
so.
do like the sound like someone for cheap or whatever without breaking the bank.
Yeah, Captain and the other guy.
Yeah, I think
Those guys are pretty good, and they do some pretty comprehensive reviews. They're very good players, and I like watching them just because it's sort of gear envy. You know, it's all really all this is all about is just gear envy. That's all we're ever really chasing after. But the point there is that it kind of follows the same thing. Is you think that in a sense you're going to be better if you have better, right? That's kind of like the thing with guitars is that everybody always misinterprets the value or the purpose of a guitar being that if you get a better, or it can be anything, golf clubs, fucking tennis rackets, sports shit. You think if you have better, you're gonna do better, and you don't. People work well with a good example is Jack White. You ever watch the It Might Get Loud documentary?
no. I've seen like clips of it, The Edge and Jimmy Page, and yeah.
I think it's probably one of my favorite rock docs ever because it shows you 3 points of view where if you were interested in music in any way or interested in these three people or you were interested in the creation of music or the songwriting, but I mean, it has literally almost every component that you could ever think of. But the reason why I'm interested in it is because it shows a guy who doesn't give a fuck about his guitars. There's one guy. And then there's a guy who gives so much of a fuck about his guitars that, and more specifically his effects, that it takes over his whole creative process. His creative process becomes an effects-driven process, right? And then there's the guy that is so virtuosic that he could go on either side of that spectrum and have no problem working with either one of those platforms. So they each have something to say to each other. It's basically Jack White saying, well, I made a guitar out of a Coke bottle, a string, a couple nails, and a pickup, right? That's like the one guy who, and then he just fucking slides it and makes his weird Jack White fucking sounds over it. Like that shit. That's him creating music. And then you have The Edge, who's like, I have this rack server with fucking 48 terabytes worth of effects hardware on it and 65,000 fucking gigs of RAM and 20 Axe effects racks and shit all in there. I hired 4 people just to help me do this.
And I play one note.
And then he goes, Trent Reznor is kind of the same guy when it comes to guitars. Like he's all the software, and he does it in a way though that isn't disingenuous. You still do have to have a massive amount of knowledge and technical know-how and talent and all that stuff. It's you can't just fake your way through it. And then Jimmy Page, of course, being of all the three, the most artistic, the most accomplished, and the most sort of raw about tone about feeling, about classic styles of playing, and all of that stuff. Very musically, he's very focused on the musical part of it. You know, and all three of them sort of feeding off of each other and feeding off of each other's sensibilities about shit. My point is, I wish that in a way, one of these things that I do, whether it's building PCs or playing video games or creating art or doing any of this stuff, if I could focus on one thing and be as good as fucking Jimmy Page, that's a 1 in a million. Like Jimmy Page, what didn't go through his life, be like moving on to the next thing or not being able to concentrate on the next thing. He was just like, my whole life is inside of this 65 fucking Les Paul Classic Sunburst.
Yeah, but if I had that Les Paul Classic, I'd be just as good.
It all brings it back around, baby. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Because the difference between me watching Jimmy Page do this on his 65 Les Paul Classic and Jimmy Page doing this on his Les Paul Classic is that I am the fat shit sitting on my couch watching him do it, saying, if I had $1 billion like Jimmy Page, of course I'd be able to fucking play Kashmir and sound like that and do everything that he does.
Wait a minute. He wrote Kashmir.
Well, right. Then you go on the other side of it. Jimmy Page is the guy that's on the other side. Literally not.
It's like, I'm not playing Kashmir. I'm playing the song that I wrote. It just happens to... It's so good that you know it as Kashmir. It's the level on which he plays, or the level in which he creates, the way he describes how he creates what he creates, and the impact that it's had on people is 10 levels above or more what any person has started doing in their life or worked years to accomplish. And you don't really have an answer to why. He can tell you, people like that can tell you till they're blue in the face that it's like, well, it's a combination of, you know, persistence, luck, having immeasurable talent, having worked on something. It's a mixture of your experiences. It's everything. But like, I feel like there are so many times in my life where I could be way more motivated and do way more, but there's something. What is the brick wall that holds most people back from doing this stuff? Like it has to be the constant need to, instead of working with what I have, create something or buy something further and give up immediately when it doesn't produce the results that I'm looking for. It's the same thing. Jack White picks the most difficult guitars. He said it himself. He's like, I literally pick the most difficult fucking instruments that I can put my hands on, because that means that I'm working hard to try to produce a viable product from those things, right? The same way that I have an iPad Pro in front of me because for some reason I thought in my head, well, I could be an illustrator and I could do better if I could be one of those digital illustrators that I see. Fucking board I bought wasn't good enough, and you sold it off.
I didn't even. I think it's under my bed.
Oh, good. Even better. Even more of proving the point.
It couldn't even be more poetic than that, because Jimmy Page didn't buy a $99 Epiphone Les Paul, the first one. He didn't go to a shop in London and say to himself, well, I need the biggest, best in the world. What he said to himself was, I literally need something that I'm going to be able to put my hands on and it is going to make sound. And then I will hopefully be able to work up to something that will match my skills and creativity down the road, right? I had a pen and paper. I had Prismacolor and Copic and all different other kinds of professional, semi-professional markers and pens and fucking colored I mean, to paint. You know, I have an entire studio in there that my girlfriend uses. And that could have been enough for anybody to become proficient to a level to where people are you're recognized for. That's how artists are made. You keep working until you feel as though you've improved your proficiency at something, right? Whether you're a guitarist or whether you're a gamer, or, you know, it could be anything. It's
gamer.
I mean, in large part, gaming is a largely passive activity. But still, to be rewarded in the center of your brain for the same things that creation or being creative does is to be good at a game or to accomplish it, right? It has to do with skill. Skill is really anything that makes your work better, and it depends on what your work is, or it depends on what you're working with. The 10,000-hour rule or whatever it is. It's just a constant struggle with wondering what you should focus on or what you feel that you're good at. So it's tough because I sit here, I have a crisis. So I have a crisis because I have all of this shit. But let's do a little experiment, and we'll see if it works. I have these weird notes all over, like at the end of the podcast notes, and this other fucking note thing that I make that I put something on every once in a while. A lot of it was when I was high or something like that. Like the fucking Spice Girls, but where it's the Sauce Girls, where it's Spice Girls but sauces.
Alfredo sauce, vodka sauce. She's the party girl.
Yeah, exactly. That was the thought. And then like
marinara, she's just like the blonde white girl that, you know, just plain. She's your base.
Like, how I wrote down one of these where it was I was trying to tell Becky like this song that I had heard from like a way long time ago, and we had heard it before, and she couldn't quite remember the name of who did the song, but it was the best way I could describe how the song went was, I've been down all the day, oh, since the day we met, oh, since the day we met. And then the second part of the song is do 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 do, and then basically the background beat is just a beatbox beat. It's just, and what the song is standing outside standing outside a broken phone booth in a small town or some shit. Like, it's like one of those like wicked long names by Primitive Radio Gods.
Oh,
that was the name of it. Look it up sometime.
Yeah, I will.
No, it was like
put it on my Spotify list.
Standing outside a broken phone booth is something in a small town with something in my hand. Maybe I'm confuddling that with that Pearl Jam song.
Lady at the back of the counter with
woman standing in a small town counter in a small town, whatever.
Yeah, selling dishwasher soap to a bunch of fools that ran out, and this is the closest general store to their house.
I'm like a lawyer, and how I'm always trying to get you off, in your parentheses, You and Me by Fall Out Boy. That's off a record. But the other list that I had was this thing where I try to like write down weird thoughts that I have in my head about shit that might translate to something that would be a more freeform thing that I would talk about on here every once in a while if I could find something. Looks like I'm completely frozen there for a second while I change over to this other tab.
Don't bring a notion to it. Just keep
I
going.
literally, I literally said one of these first things was, what would I bring on the Antiques Roadshow 160 or 100 years from now that might have value? And it would be me bringing it on Antiques Roadshow. It'd be somebody that I had bequeathed this particular item to. Like, is there going to ever be an instance where on Antiques Roadshow you are going to bring a set of pops?
No. I'll throw them in the garbage before I do that.
That's what I was thinking. Like, is there anything that I've ever had in my whole life that is going to end up on Antiques Roadshow 200 years from now?
The only way they'd be worth money is if I melted them down and actually turned them into a vinyl that was, unproduced, like the Wu-Tang single album that they made. If I somehow got the master of that, melted my pops down, and printed it on an actual record vinyl, I guess that would be how pops would be worth any money in the Antique Roadshow.
Like, the way I thought about it is like, I tried to look around my house and take an active inventory of the things that I could see that had of value to them. I looked over on my bookshelf, and there's a signed photo of Emeril Lagasse on there. I'm trying to think of who. I'm trying to think of who, like, if Antiques Roadshow is happening 100 years from now, if it was still a show, and somebody comes in with this old dusty fucking 4x6 print of Emeril Lagasse, and it's like. The guy's like some expert on retro Food Network shows from the 90s. That's the thing that he does on the Antiques Roadshow. He's just like, now this is a rare one right here. When you brought this into the show today, I was so surprised. You have no idea. Me and the other
notice
people
the E, the swoop he does in the E. This is authentic.
We tried to compare this to other Emeril memorabilia from around the same time period. The last time this came up for auction, somebody bought one for $10,000, and then the person gets all surprised because they were like, yo, my great-grandfather left this in some closet at his fucking house, and then he died from jacking off too much. And then I saw he had buried it in the wall in his house, and I knocked down the house, and there it was, the signed picture of Emeril, and I was like, yeah, this probably ain't worth shit, but maybe I'll take it on the Antiques Roadshow, maybe see if one of those retro Food Network guys can help me try to evaluate the value of this. So yeah, that was one of the bits that I had come up with.
Oh, it's a decent bit.
Sure, why not? The other one that I come up with when I was real high was when Becky's friend Olivia was over at the house, and I kind of thought about a universal concept that I think everybody struggles with when they're at somebody else's house for an extended period of time, like when you're staying at somebody's house.
Can I guess?
Go ahead.
How can I turn this situation into a three-way?
Well, that would have been the first thing I thought about, not necessarily the last. It could have been a funny bit, but sex bits are such a handout. There's such a you could try to put a spin on it that's more unique, but everybody's done that.
That's why it was more of a quip from me than a bit from you.
Yeah.
These are classic terms. Keep up.
Clearly, the thought I put in this is way more than what.
Oh yeah, it's way more than a quip.
Way more developed. So the way of thinking behind this is you live in your house every single day, and you think that you've gotten your house to a point where you're like, yo, my house is dope. I've done a lot of cool shit to my house to make it seem awesome. But the only way for you to know that your house is awesome, or that shit that you do in your house is awesome, is when somebody comes over that's never been to your house before. Suddenly, what?
It just froze at the perfect
time.
My
face
Keep going.
Up at something stupid.
Yeah.
We're gonna just see if we can get to the thumbnail on that. You might want to make a note of the time. the way that you can judge when your house is garbage is if somebody comes over and it's like they've come to some foreign land. No, I think that's the thumbnail. I think that pretty much sums it up right there. That lean back face you got going. So
you read any good books lately?
And as
Try that again.
And as I tried to say before, yes. Actually, the answer is yes, surprisingly.
Are you reading these books or are you listening to these books?
I'm reading them physically.
Okay, just wondering.
One of them is Rhett and Link's Book of Mythicality.
Okay. Didn't know they wrote a book, but
yeah, they came out with it a couple weeks ago, and it's a hardcover sort of coffee table-ish type of book. It's got a lot of pictures and shit in it.
Pictures, little like boxes of explanations.
Yeah, it's kind of like
a museum in a book form.
Yeah, but it actually does have a lot of physical reading. Like because it's a pretty lengthy book, but there is a lot of filler bullshit in it. But it's actually a pretty funny book, and it's about the length of a graphic novel to complete. It's not anything crazy like a trade paperback. It's it's probably about yay thick. And that's a good book. And then the other one was Fuck That's Delicious is Action Bronson's new book. Which is a hybrid cookbook sort of story coffee table. Again, another type of book like that. Also a lot of expositional prose in that too, like just sort of biographical stuff and stuff related to him and his music and his food and, interlaced with recipes and shit like that, which is kind of a cool format.
That's cool.
So I was reading those, but the more traditional book was I thought the other day, and I hadn't read it in a really long time, and it was one of my favorite books of all time. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was about time. I was like, you know what I haven't done in a while?
That's a good read.
I mean, I only ever read it cover to cover once, and then I think I maybe tried to do it a couple more times since then, but never did it. I just kind of got through the first quarter of it.
Yeah.
But I'm about halfway through it now. And the other one I read a little bit before that was Nick Offerman's book, Paddle Your Own Canoe.
I've had that for a while, since it came out. I just never read through it.
There's something. Because I don't have any criticism for the first three books I just said. They're actually all good for what they are.
Wow.
They're fucking really good books. But
highly recommend. 5 stars. No criticism.
The one thing that I can say about Paddle Your Own Canoe is that I think it starts very strong, and it comes from a pretty good place comedically, and you can definitely tell he's writing it. Like he's got a very specific tone, and there's not much ambiguity to his writing. But towards the latter half of the book, it starts to head into a territory where it kind of repeats himself a little bit, and it starts to get derivative and a little callbacky. And then to the final climax of how sort of redundant it gets, he sort of starts on a giant love letter to Megan Mullally at the end of it. And in a way that seems very on borderline obsessive and a little disingenuous. That's kind of my criticism about the book.
I don't think I ever got that far.
And not to say...
Maybe because I fell off when it started to repeat itself, I guess.
It could have very well been that at that point that you stopped. But I persisted, in what I got was at the end, it comes up a little at the end. But there really is this point that's a little over 3/4 into the book where it's okay, we get it. You have a almost sickeningly romantic relationship with your wife, and you to the point where you're you're literally taking the definition of waxing poetic to a whole other level. Like it's like he's fucking like Emerson or Thoreau or some of these like names that college people throw out to make people think they're intelligent.
Hemingway.
Like, yeah, right. He's clearly a very intelligent guy, but very intelligent in the way that, like, again, most like college artsy thespian type people are intelligent.
Mm.
They're intelligent very much on like a surface level, and it's very focused. Their intelligence, like it's like their linguistic skills are like fucking through the roof, but everything else is like
basic like reading straight from a book, basically.
That
makes them sound smart when in reality you're literally just saying what you read verbatim.
Well, and not only that, but
without
like
any twist on it.
Their delivery is like Spark Notes level.
Yeah.
Condensed. Like his shit is like very like he uses words just because they're flowery, and for some reason I think in some parts he's very self-aware of that, which might make it a little better, but not much better, but it's a little better. The fact that he's like, you know, I'm gonna cut you a couple fucking like $20 words here and use them correctly, which, you know, sometimes if you just pepper that shit in there without knowing, then it looks even worse. But for him, he at least knows how to use these words well. He uses the word delicious a lot. Like I think literally one of his books was like the subline, and it was like a guide to delicious living. He's very like, he has a very specific thing to say about lifestyle and like, you know, shit like that. Kind of a hipstery way of looking at it too. A little bit like woodworking and outdoor shit. Just a lot of that. But he is funny. And then what I also read a little bit before that, since it's been a while, we actually haven't even hit this topic ever in like a really long time. I think we
hit it like once.
I read Clapton's autobiography before that. I can't recommend that one enough. That one I tell people all the time. It's like, that's a dude who...
fueled by cocaine.
Oh my God. It is fucking unreal. I think an even better thing about that story is how he ties in so much of other artists' stories. You're not so much reading an autobiography about Eric Clapton as you're reading an autobiography about Eric Clapton and friends. And incidentally, Eric Clapton and friends is like fucking George Harrison and...
So he's airing everyone's dirty laundry? That's a little...
I don't know as if he's airing dirty... Well, the thing is, because I watched it from the other side too. Because they just put out the Martin Scorsese, George Harrison biography on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those Eagles length documentaries that's like fucking like 3.5 hours long. You got to really be dedicated. However, though, if it's a
Scorsese movie that doesn't have Leonardo DiCaprio screaming in it for 3 hours, I don't want to watch it.
It's actually really good if you are a person that, like me, I literally can devour these types of things without even really being obsessed with the person we're talking about.
Well,
if that makes sense.
It acts as a fill in the blanks of stuff that you don't know about them, even though you have a surface level about them.
I definitely, well, in many ways, you can, and he did it, but you can't do a documentary about just George Harrison without making it about the Beatles and Clapton. Like that, those two things you can't particularly separate from George Harrison, because Clapton, George Harrison were in like a love triangle for years. He talked about it in the biography. There's a huge section about it. And then also how George Harrison himself was like turbo mystical to the point of like where it started to get a little like hack, like in the same way that many people kind of interpreted John Lennon as the same thing. Like Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr still very much working class, very much alive, which might not be a coincidence, but also still singularly working class dudes that didn't really fall into the trap of mysticism at the close of the 70s or before it, a little bit before it. They didn't do the Maharajas and the fucking like all of this shit that George Harrison did. And Clapton largely didn't get into that either. He wasn't that guy.
No, he was too high on cocaine to be spiritual.
He was, well,
it's one or the other, all right?
You know what the thing is, though, is actually with cocaine, his deal wasn't really cocaine, it was booze. He was like Mick Mars, like, he drank like a fish all day, every day. And used coke to keep it going. Like, you know what I mean? That was the way that he did it. But just a very dense, really long, super interesting autobiography about him. And then as a companion piece, you can watch the George Harrison thing and you get a big, huge 10,000-foot view of what it was like for both of these dudes, plus being in the Beatles, plus being Eric Clapton throughout like several decades. It's huge. It spans like a really long period of time. You feel like you fucking know these people. Like that's probably a good allure
after a book in 3.5 hours. I'm sure.
Jesus Christ! I mean,
there's
at least
not much left
enough
to tell. Shit, I could give you my life story in about 25 minutes with commercials.
Now back to the Lifetime original 25-minute show, Dillon, A Life with Video Games. Yeah, those. Have you read anything?
Yeah. So I just finished maybe a couple weeks ago at this point. A book called Significant Zero by Walt Williams. It's autobiographical, I'd say. It's like basically his journey through the video game industry as a writer. It's just real interesting. Like some of the game, like talks about some of the games he worked on and like how shitty it is basically to work for video games, but also how like rewarding at the end of the day it ends up being. So you're just in this weird love-hate relationship with you yourself, what you're making, your video games. Like it's very pessimistic but also inspiring at the same time. Like he uses like inspirational language while being pessimistic about it, if you kind of get what I'm saying here.
The parallel I can draw with it is Anthony Bourdain. The first book that he ever wrote was Kitchen Confidential, which talks about the life of a chef who works in Hell's Kitchen in New York, which is one of the most volatile places to be a chef. And the industry at large is full of horrific mistreatment and high pressure situations. But he's been in the industry for 30 years because he literally couldn't do anything else. He didn't want to do anything else. He couldn't do anything else.
Very similar idea then. So yeah, he talks
there
about
are many things like that.
He worked on like BioShock 2, most notably worked on the Spec Ops: The Line. Yeah, I think that was the first game he was like the lead like one of the lead writers on. He was pretty much just the executive producer on a lot of stuff. Like he was
really good games. Then.
He was like this 2K, guy. Yeah, he's also co-writing the new, the Battlefront 2, how it's gonna have a single player storyline in it. So him and Mitch Dyer, I think. Yeah, that's what it is. They're writing that. So yeah, he's got his hands. I think I
saw a little bit of the press conference with him talking about it. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe
some interview, maybe an interview. Maybe that's what it was.
Maybe it's a very good book. not too long. I would actually have wished it was kind of longer.
Really?
Like, but
Okay.
well, just because it's so interesting, you know. He goes into detail. It's not like it's like service level bullshit. Like
Right.
it's like really detailed, but at the same time, you're like, man, I wish this could be longer, but it can't be longer because
The story has caught up to him.
This story has caught up to him. He already
Yeah.
lived this.
Did you ever watch Video Game the movie? Or Indie Game the movie?
Yes, yeah.
That's kind of like the same idea. Like Indie Game the movie was sort of showing you like not the major production house level
It was
of that,
more
but
like
the pressure.
three levels of like one game was a success, the other one was having pressure to come out, and what was the last one?
I think one of them was Super Meat Boy, the other one was
Fez.
and then maybe Braid.
Was Braid the other one?
I don't know. I know.
I think Braid was a successful one. I want to say Braid was the successful one, and then Super Meat Boy was the one coming out to success, and then Fez was the one that was like basically failing in its feet. Like,
and there was one where they had major issues with launch day because the live market brief wasn't approving it or something.
Oh no, that was Super Meat Boy. Super Meat Boy, you saw the launch in the movie.
Yeah. That was interesting too, because those are guys that don't even have the backing of a major production house, and the pressure for them to complete what their projects is like. It's just fucking all on them. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, we can see the effect that it had from fucking No Man's Sky. I mean, I'd love to hear, Jesus Christ, if a book came out like or maybe even just a very long expose about that shit came out after the fact. That'd be interesting as fuck.
Okay, so another book that I have not yet started reading, but I do want to read is it's called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, and it's by Jason Schreier, who's a reporter at Kotaku.
Yep.
And it's basically three stories of like the like behind the scenes at like big studio games. I'm pretty sure it's Destiny, Uncharted 4, and I forgot what the last one was. But if you want to get a taste of what that book is about, EA just shut down Visceral Studios.
Yeah.
Which was like one of their smaller teams that like works on games. They did the Dead Space games, and they did Battlefield Hardline. They just shut them down, and he did like a big huge expose on, because they were making a single player Star Wars like action game.
Yeah.
That had the Amy Hennig, the director from Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, on it. She was working to make a Star Wars like basically Star Wars Uncharted at this studio, and they just shuttered the studio. So this is a real long expose about basically what was going on behind the scenes at that studio leading up to its shutdown.
Yeah,
it happened like a week ago. He just put it up, I want to say Friday. It's a pretty long article. It's on Kotaku, and basically you read this and it gives you an idea of how the book reads too.
Right. So the book is basically is it three horror stories, or is it?
Not really, because I mean, you have Uncharted 4 came out. Like, these are all games that came out, it's more, it's the like as the name suggests, blood, sweat, and pixels. Like it's a play off the blood, sweat, and tears in the background. Like, this is what happened. Like, this is the shit that goes on to make your favorite games happen.
It's kind of an interesting thing because it can apply to lots of different shit, and this is something that's relatively new that you could apply this to. You know what I mean? The fact that we're living in a culture where you can publish. The next thing is going to be the biographies and stories of MLG pro gamers and their struggle to rise to the top. Ooh, can't wait for ESPN 30 for 30.
I don't really have a struggle to rise to the top. You just play the internet ladders, Like, everything's online. There's no struggle. You just sit at home. You play the internet ladders. You get good. You get noticed because you're at the top of the ladder. The team picks you up. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Yeah.
That's every story.
We'll do it tomorrow.
Sure, it's hard and annoying. I mean, there was a League of Legends documentary on Netflix at one point in time about like how an esports team trains for to play. So there is something already like that.
It's a remarkable thing that's even. I mean, just given the fact that, just thinking about, because we're a product of it. We grew up playing games that were at the time could have been considered I mean, some of the first gaming experiences that I had in a group of people were with the games that initially started to become competitive games in a space, which is Counter-Strike and Team Fortress, StarCraft, and yes, absolutely. All these games that I played ended up becoming the American standards for competitive gaming. And then it sort of evolved into the games that were almost completely developed around the idea that they were going to be like this, like Dota and all this shit. Dota and League of Legends and these types of games, the MOBAs and the rail stuff. It's like, it's just interesting that happened based on the experience that I had playing these games. And I was always bad at them, but it's just interesting. It's crazy. It's hard to think about that there are people out there making millions of dollars playing fucking CS:GO or League of Legends or Dota or whatever. Street Fighter, that's a big one. Fucking any Street Fighter shit. I mean, that's the community around that is fucking insane. Yeah. And Smash Brothers, holy fuck. It's amazing that a little beat 'em up by Nintendo has like literally become one of the most like popular competitive esports games. But I digress. Into nothing.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I've been reading or look to read in the future. I mean, like within the next week or so. I just gotta get the book.
I don't know if I have anything else that I really have on the docket for what I want to read. It's I bet because I like when I
there you go. I just gave you a book recommendation.
Yeah, I can hit that up.
It's like $10.
Oh shit, yeah. But
also read the article on Kotaku. That's a real interesting article.
That part I didn't. Who would you say?
It's Jason Schreier. Guy? Yeah, same guy.
Okay, I'll have to read that.
I'll read
that article and shoot me the link over to it. I would like to read it. Yeah,
rock and roll.
How does that make you feel? Did we salvage this garbage of a podcast from where I had taken it so low with shopping?
And we didn't even do our hit segment.
Well, we can save that for next week. I feel like the variation on the hit segment generated enough content, as we'd like to say that it's worthwhile. Content.
Super Mario Odyssey's the shit.
Just gonna end with that.
Next week. At this point, I have like 108 moons so far. So
Jesus Christ.
I'm blazing through. I guess there's like 908 in the game.
Holy fuck. I think Dan Reichert said he did the whole goddamn game.
Yeah, he's got all of them.
Holy shit, dude.
What was I going to say? I forgot. Never mind. Forgot. I think if I had to base it on any other Mario game, I feel like I'm about 1/3 of the way through it. Because I fought Bowser once.
Okay.
So I'm basing this on other 3D Mario games where you fight Bowser 3 times. One in the first third, the second third, and then the final battle. So
the mini bosses are the wedding planners, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna tell you, I was thinking today, I was like, go out to Best Buy and do a big spree on a bunch of shit for like my computer and my network at home, or just not do that for a long time and then just get a Switch. Just
You know
go
what
in.
I went to GameStop yesterday, and on the right on the back they had the Odyssey bundle
Yeah, I saw
right
that
there.
at Best Buy too. Not in Best Buy, but I saw it on the
I
website.
saw it in person. It was just sitting there. There was two of them.
It's beckoning.
Ashley just bought a Switch too.
Oh my God.
So my house has just got in my house there's two
Your
of
house's
every
network
system.
is again.
Do you wonder why you're a fucking a square cube with two eyeballs on it half the time?
You need. I think what you need to do instead of what I said during the break, what you need to do is
I need to get like a
just
mesh network in here.
you need not only a whole home mesh network, but you need to call Spectrum and say, I need a business line put into my house
This
so
this,
that
this house has two of every current gen console in it. Plus two full gaming
I'm
rigs.
telling you, you should call them and just be like, listen, what's the equivalent of the T1 line from like 15 years ago? Like, can we get that put in? Either that or see if you can just call Verizon and have them put in fiber
a
down there,
special
like dig
fiber.
a fucking trench from the Verizon store in Oneida all the way to your house, so that you can get some of that like it's like 200 megabytes down internet or some
That'd be
shit.
delicious.
Ooh, then you just get there. Then you just be able to stream video everybody at the same time.
Well, we got to be streaming 4K video because we all got 4K TVs.
All day. All day, everybody. That's how you
I got to get that HDR.
You got to do your stress test where everybody's streaming 4K video on all their displays. Except for Andrew, he ain't got dirt for monitors. He's just got 40 Twitch monitors running like it's a sports bar. You walk in and it's like a fucking Dave and Buster's, but it's instead of the Devil's game, it's like a TV with a fucking Twitch going on it, salty bet, fucking a bunch of other shit just to take up space.
And the Devil's game also.
And a Devil's game right at the bottom.
Yeah, just one sports game. It's just the Devils. It's just...
Oh my God. So we did a hybrid. We did a hybrid.
Yeah, I had to sneak some Odyssey in there.
Yeah, why not? There's other stuff. I got some other things that I might that hopefully I'll start playing this week. I have to put in a larger hard drive in here because right now I'm literally just running my operating system SSD and I don't have enough SATA cables. I have to go buy them. So I'm probably going to buy some SATA cables, put in a shitload of storage. I have like a 2 terabyte NAS drive and then like another terabyte in here. So I'm going to put all those in and then do, I want to maybe try to play Forza Horizon, do a little bit of that. And I'd also want to play, there was one other thing that I want to play that I can't remember, but I will remember it. And then I will try to play it.
I'll try to beat Pyre by next week, and we can talk about that too.
Okay.
Also, I bought Nier Automata, so we'll see how that goes.
All right, cool. I'm gonna do more Dead Cells. I don't really know if there's a sense of I don't really know how that game can be.
Maybe I'll pick that up
completed.
and maybe I'll pick that up and play some of that too, so I can have something to say about it.
Yeah, that's a great game. It's again, I don't really know what the structure of it is from a narrative perspective, but I guess you find out more as you go.
Yeah.
But I ain't got nothing else to talk about.
All right, we're done. That's it. Episode 20 in the books.
Oh, in the very short book that has a very wide publishing date. If it were a book,
we're getting back on the
graphic novel that is the
back
book
into
of this podcast. I don't know what the fuck that was, but that doesn't sound great.
I think she hurt herself again.
Oh my God.
She likes to fall.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, she's
great.
like you, clumsy.
Go good. Yeah, amazing. So, I don't have a remember something can be something.
Yeah, you can't always be you can't always be significant zero. Sometimes you're paddle your own boat by Nick Offerman.
That works for me. I feel like that
Yeah,
satisfies the need.
Okay, cool.
And remember, audio versions of the podcast are available below these
I'll
two
put
heads that are in front of you right now. These two pixely blocks.
if somehow you actually, oh, I'm not pixely. I'm direct feed.
You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I am Legos with eyes.
Yeah, if somehow you got to the part where we talked about that article, I'll actually link it in the description. But
That'd be great. That would be good. That part of it is very important. Otherwise, I have some jackets to model in front of the mirrors. So
hopefully you got that three-sided mirror so you can see.
it's gonna be a montage. I'm gonna put on some '80s music and model my jackets. Everybody's working for the weekend. That's what I'm gonna do. Watch me.
All right.
Live stream's coming up after this one.
Twitch.tv
That is the jacket off. Huh?
So twitch.tv/Brent's Models. Brent Models.
And that's the Jacket Off Podcast, episode 20.